The biggest problem with chat I wanted to solve was like noise and context being lost. And so when you look at a task now, I see all of the communication that ever happened about that task. I literally have an insight, like a God level view into everything around a project and a task. And I think that this is the way to actually produce like 10x value in time savings using AI. Our thesis right now is to use some element of consumption pricing. What we want to do is prove how many minutes we've saved people. So I was like, let's just build a tool where you can track tasks and you can switch between a list view, a board view, and a calendar view. Now, my rule is the first version should really take a month of engineering time maximum. And you can do user testing, but users can test it by actually using the functionality rather than using like a fake prototype.
Hey, this is Carlos, CEO of Product School and your host on the Product Podcast. Today's guest is Zeb Evans, the founder and CEO of ClickUp, the all-in-one productivity platform that brings together multiple work tools like task management, chat, and document sharing into one application, allowing teams to eliminate the need to switch between multiple tools. ClickUp has experienced remarkable growth since its founding in 2017 and reached a valuation of $4 billion in its last funding round. The company boasts an impressive list of customers such as the Netflix and Spotify product teams. In this episode, we cover how Zeb's narcolepsy and multiple near-death experiences led him to build a productivity product, how to measure the real productivity gains and ROI from a B2B SaaS product, how to position your product to win in a crowded market, when CEO should wear the Chief Product Officer hat to lead product strategy and be in the details, and how to layer a sales-led growth motion onto a product-led growth one. I especially enjoyed learning about how ClickUp's product team is using AI across the entire development cycle to boost their own productivity, and how they're integrating AI into ClickUp to automate important tasks with agents. Let's jump in. Welcome to the show, Zeb.
Thanks so much for having me, Carlos.
You know, I don't typically have CEOs, but I'm very excited about this one because you are also wearing the hat of the CPO.
I am. I kind of was from the beginning and then lost the hat for a little bit, and I have the hat back now.
We'll definitely talk about that. But before, I want to learn more about those near-death experiences that you had and how that inspired you to start your current company.
Yeah, so I've had, depending on how you count, 5 or 6 near-death experiences now at this point in life. And each of them have kind of forced me on a little bit different path, either instantly or a little bit after that experience. I think the one that relates to like software is my first one, where I was in a really bad accident when I was 10 years old. And I grew up in a very small town in North Carolina, a few thousand people. And so, and this was 25 years ago. So nobody really used technology back then. And I hadn't used a computer before until I was in the hospital, and we didn't have Netflix. It was switching through 7 different TV channels, and everything was about food. And I was not able to eat for like a month, so I couldn't watch TV. But there was a laptop in the hospital, and that was where I first got exposed to technology, and I fell in love with it. I fell in love with building things and the creativity side of it. And yeah, it's kind of flash forward and now I'm here today, and I don't think I would be in the same place without that happening.
Yeah, when I said near-death experiences, I meant personal experiences, not company. So you definitely took that to heart, and I know that's crazy, but in a way, it seems like you learned something about your resilience and how you get creativity to then channel it in a different way.
Everybody has bad things happen in life. It's how you deal with them, right? You can get something really bad that happens, and you can deal with it in a positive way, or you can deal with it in a negative way. And I think if you kind of choose to deal with things in a positive way and say, hey, I can't control this, so it is what it is, then I think you can end up getting something great out of it. And you don't always realize it immediately. I mean, it can take years for you to realize that something really negative was actually good in hindsight. But that's kind of how I tend to deal with things, because I think as heads of product, the CPOs, the CEOs, your job is dealing with product and problems all day long. Like you're a problem solver, right? And you're going to get a noisy customer, you're going to get an issue with the feature parity or whatever it may be. And so I tend to look at my job as a problem solver.
Another thing that caught my attention is that you journal a lot, and apparently you filled 60 journals, and then you have some sort of ritual to summarize them and highlight them. So please tell me more about that.
So I've been journaling now like 11 years, and I started just by writing, I mean, really just like one sentence, like what I did that day and things like that. And now it's evolved into what I'm thinking, problems, and certainly kind of lessons that I'm relearning. And I think that the lessons piece is the most important, because I go back at the end of every year, and I used to reread every single page in every single journal, and it didn't scale. So now I always reread the prior year in depth, and I highlight action items or lessons, really big lessons that I learned is kind of like what I'm looking for. And then I go back and I do reread every journal, but I skip through to the pages where I've marked something. And so now it takes me like 2 weeks to do. I do it at the last 2 weeks in December of every year, and I can really, it's a great tool to go back in time. Like, I think if you, I mean, you can kind of like see what you were thinking and what you were going through, and it reframes a lot of things. Because going back to that problems kind of example is, I think most people would agree that like problems that you have today, when you look back 10 years ago, those things you would see yourself very fortunate to have those problems. It's like, oh, I get to deal with these problems. And that's what journaling has really helped me do, is like keep me grounded, remember what it was like early on, and keep learning the lessons of the past that I learned and that you may forget. Because I think everybody kind of learns things and then they could forget them after a couple of months. That's certainly what I do. And so I have to keep reminding myself and reiterating things to really make them stick.
And even if you don't reread them, I just think the fact that you write them down is a forcing function to try to think about them more than just letting them be. Another thing that, I love this because I hosted a lot of guests, and I can get to learn different personalities. But since the very beginning, you came across as someone extremely open and ready. You said, hey, no red lines. Let's talk about whatever you want. And in fact, you disclose a lot of things that I think are very personal. So my intention with these questions is to show that personal side of a CEO of a very successful company, and how it's not always rainbows and sunshine. So the other thing is about narcolepsy. And you mentioned that you're using that as a way to make the most out of your time.
Yeah. They kind of go hand in hand with, like, I think near-death experiences give me a crazy urgency to everything that I do in life. It's like, I still always feel like there's something else coming. And I think that it just gives me like this finite look at time. And for context, I found out I had narcolepsy like 15 years or so ago, around when I was 20 years old. And I used to sleep if I slept 12 hours or if I slept 5 hours, I didn't feel a difference. I was always tired. And, my narcolepsy kind of led to like this chronic fatigue and later in life also. And I started, I'm not a big fan of like pharmaceutical industry and stuff like that. So I started kind of like trying to do life hacking, the classic, like things that I think everybody's familiar with today, but that maybe 10 years ago, people were not really doing. I've been doing this for a very long time around like doing journaling in the morning, meditation. Exercise was absolutely key for me to get rid of fatigue. As soon as I wake up, get out of bed, do something very active. And that's what kind of gets me going. That kind of like morning routine plus eating really healthy. And for me, it's like, it's not eating much during the day. I eat at the end of the day, which is like what some people say not to do. But for me, it works. And I'm able to like keep that energy throughout the day going, and kind of get around, those obstacles like narcolepsy.
Seb, I think there is meat here to do at least another episode where we can go deeper into life extension and all the different things that you're able to do to stay energized. But I need to bring us back to product because that's also important. I see that you started ClickUp in 2017. Back in the day, there were already a lot of project management tools such as Jira, Asana, Trello, others. So what was your rationale to start yet another project management tool and position it in the market in a way that was really, really successful?
First of all, I actually didn't want to get into this category for that reason, because it was so competitive. But we ended up here naturally. And the story is that I actually wanted to build a new Craigslist where you could pay in app and remove sketchiness. I've been an entrepreneur my whole life. Like even before I was 10, before I got that laptop, I was always buying and selling things. And I had later in life had been scammed on Craigslist, and I also sold a bunch of stuff on Craigslist. And it was just super inefficient the way things were done, but it was horrible user experience, and still is. And I wanted to fix that. Before we did that, we started planning how we would build the product tactically using software, right? So which project management tools we're using, what are we going to use for docs, what are we going to use for bug tracking. And I had a previous startup before this, and we ended up with, it was about 25 people in that startup, so relatively small, but we had 15 different productivity tools by the end of that journey. And we kept adding one more because we were limited by something, or there was like some nuance to a feature or functionality there that wasn't available that we needed over here. And so we literally ended up with 15 different productivity tools. And so once I kind of stopped doing that company, I was like, holy shit, we were spending so much time just using our tools rather than actually getting work done. So when we were starting to build the Craigslist idea, I was like, let's just build our own simple project management solution where it's flexible. And the one problem I really wanted to solve was being able to switch between views when you're managing tasks. At the time, that did not exist. You had to use Trello for boards. You had to use Asana for lists. Jira had its own very opinionated methodology for viewing things. So I was like, let's just build a tool where you can track tasks and you can switch between a list view, a board view, and a calendar view. And that's literally what we built, the first thing. And it took us about a month to do that. And I thought we would time box it and say, all right, we're done. Now we're just going to continue, building the Craigslist thing. But it was very evident that like this was the right thing to do. Everything in my intuition, and I think our team's intuition, said, let's just keep building this, because we were so passionate about it. And I think that there was just a lot of opportunity there, even in a very crowded category, to build something differentiated and to build something flexible that works to the way people work, rather than like deciding how other people should work.
I remember back in the day, I had to pay for a Trello add-on to have the calendar view because I couldn't get my list view at the same time. So I completely resonate with that. And obviously that's a long time ago. We are in 2024, almost 2025. So what's the latest and greatest of your company today?
The vision back then really is now the same as it is today. I mean, what we always wanted to do was be able to put all of our work in one place and have really flexible work management software that enables us to work the way that we work. And so like from a business perspective, that meant, and product like market perspective, that meant that we were targeting everybody, right? It was 2-person businesses or 20,000 person enterprises. And it was, your classic engineering use cases, and it was your mom and pop like flower shop use cases. And we still are the exact same today. It's just that we've iterated towards that vision. And we're finally in a place where I feel like we've got the foundation there of the platform. We've got all the tools, and we are continuing building, of course. But today is very different than 2017. In 2017, it was just about flexible kind of task management. It evolved into very flexible, deep project management. And today we really have an everything app for work. I mean, we generally replace 3 or more tools when we go into any company. We replace chat, we replace project management, bug tracking, time tracking, knowledge bases, docs, workload, resource management, really everything in one place. And we have a wide variety of use cases. Customers, we were a few months ago, we were number 1 in G2 crowd for CRM, which was crazy to me, honestly crazy to me. But a lot of small customers under 50 employees use us for CRM as well. And they've been able to build their own solutions on top of the platform. And today that's a huge focus for us, is really unblocking creators and allowing people to build whatever they want on our platform.
Because that sounds so counterintuitive to the classic marketing textbook where they say, well, you have to pick a customer and build something very specific, and you are building the everything up for workplace. So guide me through that process as a product person that has to prioritize. And how did you go about picking those pockets to ensure that you are building a product that enough people are liking so you can continue scaling?
Yeah. First of all, I firmly believe that even if you are building for a specific vertical or market at first, from a product perspective and really engineering technical perspective, you should build the product without that vertical or market in mind. Meaning build as if you were going to pivot, right? So make the data models super flexible. Make all of the components very flexible. And because at its core, most software has very similar building blocks, and especially in certain categories, right? So if you are in anywhere around the collaboration category, a lot of the primitives that you build, like a task, data model, commenting features, docs or communication, things like that, they are very primitive in nature. Like it's the foundation, the building blocks. And I think too many people build product and build those primitives very opinionated. So they lock themselves into that category and that vertical. So I think the point is, even if I'm not saying it's the wrong thing to do to choose a vertical or choose a market, but I think it is the wrong from a business perspective. But I think it is the wrong thing to do from a product perspective, is to build too opinionated to lock yourself into that market, because you just never know. At least in the early stages, you just simply never know. So for us, we went with those principles of let's build everything very flexible. Maybe we will choose a market, maybe we won't, but we're just going to build it flexible for now because that's what we wanted. And then when we launched it to users, people just started using it for exactly what I wanted them to, which was everything. They kind of created all of these different use cases. As far as prioritizing things, we have always been obsessed with community. And I still and was early on in the community every single day. I read nearly every single piece of feedback. If I don't get every single piece, at least I get an AI summary of the feedback that happens today. And I get that every single day. And so I know exactly what people are feeling and how the community is responding to new features. And that's what we did then, was whatever community wanted as far as their top request, we built for about 50% of our roadmap. And then another 50% was our vision. It was what people were not asking for the community or asking within the community generally. So we kind of ended up with a product that's half of community driven and half really where we want to take our company as a North Star.
At the beginning of this interview, you mentioned that at some point you stopped wearing the product hat and now you're wearing it again. So love to get your take on how involved you are in product and why you think that's the right approach for a CEO.
We went from a very small company, 25 people or so, and very profitable. We didn't raise any funds. We bootstrapped close to 10 million ARR, and we raised funds for our first time, which I do think was the right thing to do, especially given the competitive nature of the category. But that also caused us to do the classic, kind of growth at all costs mentality and listen to advice from everybody else. And I think that there really was nobody whispering in my ear saying, hey, don't build out big organizations, don't hire a bunch of people. And that's exactly what happened. Is you bring in, I think we got told also is you need to bring adults into the room, and I didn't disagree with that at the time. I was like, yeah, that makes sense, right? People have done this before. They know how to do it better than me. And I think that can be true in certain situations, but I don't think it's true when you have a product founder that really is in the details and is able to spend most of their time in product still. I think it's much better for the founder to remain head of product. And so I went through that journey, and we went through 3 heads of product, and I kept thinking and they were all great. They really were exceptional people. But it just there's too much conflict, and it's more so the conflict is more so created because of lack of transparency and communication. It becomes a telephone game, where the founder is up here, and then you have a head of product here. That still isn't, the founder is still kind of controlling the vision largely, but now there's a lot of communication gaps that happen when they're talking to the team. And more importantly, the product is being built really without the founder being in the details and really seeing every single thing happen and seeing the product process happen. So I think that there is, I would say, majority of companies should have, CPOs and heads of product that are not the founders, to be clear. And I also think that you shouldn't just put the founder in charge of product just because they were a product person at some point. It doesn't work a lot of times, and I've seen it not work a lot too. But in my case, I was always in the details. I was always like designing too. And I had to see every product area kind of come to life. So it was, an aha moment, which was really like obvious in hindsight, but that, I should be this person. And today I am that person.
So what are the trade-offs and how do you get leverage to be able to be in the details while ensuring that there are other parts of the business that are also running smoothly without you being that in the details?
And from a product organization perspective, we have a very, very flat org with really great product managers that most of them were not a product manager before ClickUp. They started as like a customer support person or technical support or QA. But we see that they became obsessed with product and they know every in and out of the product. And with our community and our product process streamlined, I mean, our product process really is like, hey, see what we need to build based on community feedback and some of our vision. Let's plan it with the community, share prototypes, share details. We run surveys every single day, like 60-second surveys to get feedback from customers. It's really more of like the product role at an organization is a lot of project management, really. It's kind of like seeing the end-to-end life cycle of the product through managing the process. And many of them are great creatively, many of them are not great creatively and like UX thinking wise. But our process kind of solves for that because there's a lot of collaboration in the product process. And I am fortunate I've hired a few of our users from the community. So like I'm in our feedback community. We use Canny and always have. That's been amazing for us. And I'm in there talking to some of these folks that are just giving the most detailed feedback ever. And they would record clips and videos and send me docs about like what we should build. And like, so they're essentially sending me PRDs, and I'm like, let me talk to you. So I would always set up a call and, hire those people, generally speaking. And so many of those are product managers today. I have right hand and left hand people around me. Our head of product strategy was a ClickUp user. And so he's able to get in the details as well. But my point around I have to be in the detail of every product area in some way. And I have to know what's going on because our product is very unique where we have 20 different product teams building one product, right? So it's like each of them on their own would normally be their own product. But in our case, it's one product platform. So if any product squad is building something in isolation without knowing what everybody else is working on, it results in a lot of thrown away work and it's super inefficient. Because what we can do if we know what everybody else is working on is when we work on a certain feature, we can build it in a way that's super flexible that works to accomplish like 5 other teams' roadmap use cases. And then we unlock so much more velocity because of that.
So if I were to take a sneak peek into your calendar today and see some of your rituals or recurring meetings, like tell me more about how you go about product reviews and other types of rituals to really be in the details with people. I really want to get to the nuts and bolts.
Yeah. So before something, even if it's a small thing, goes into our staging environment, I get tagged in ClickUp and they will record a quick clip of it. It's like our video recording tool. And it's usually just a minute or 2 long and says, hey, this is the change and this is what it looks like. And I get a branch that I can click on and go play with it in our staging environment. And then I will give feedback there. Usually it's just, hey, good to go, sign off. Lots of times there will be some UX things that we need to tweak or some functionality things that we need to tweak. So for all small things, kind of the squads run on their own using our product process. And then I'm at the end of it and I just kind of approve it or give feedback for every little change that happens. For larger features like initiatives and bigger projects, I'm very involved early on in the PRD phase, primarily around scoping. So I'm like, I would say like the king of de-scoping. I love de-scoping, and I love changing scope so that it accomplishes more use cases, meaning it makes it a little bit more flexible and then allows people to use it for different reasons than we were thinking of. So that's really where I come in. And usually, we've actually gotten pretty good at this now over time. But at first you would get a big PRD that had maybe like version 1 and version 2, and version 1 was going to take, 4 or 5 months, and the next version was going to take a few months. Now my rule is the first version should really take a month of engineering time maximum. And we get to a point where we descope something to that version 1 where it takes about a month of engineering time, and then sign off on it. And then at the end of that month, there's a big iterative process that happens where we all kind of start playing with it and just giving feedback, because I think too many people get stuck in design land where you can just go and design back and forth, iteration, and you can do all of the user research and come back and keep going, and that can take many months to do that. Or you can just build like the first version, the POC, in a month, and then you can play with it in real life. And you can do user testing, but users can test it by actually using the functionality rather than using like a fake prototype. And so we found it actually much faster to build product that way, even though it wouldn't sound like it. It's like just start using engineering resources. It's actually like net for net, I think, a lot faster development cycles.
And who's involved in each of your squads?
So each squad has a product manager, an engineering manager, a QA person, and several engineers. And then from a org perspective, we have a senior director of product where all of the PMs report to that single person, and then he reports to me. And so it's a relatively flat organization structure. We also have our head of product strategy, and he reports to me as well. And so he's in those details with me, and usually he'll take a pass before I do. And so I'd say 9 times out of 10, I 100% agree with his feedback. And so I found that like right-hand person that has the same product brain as I do and has seen all the context that I've seen, that's able to kind of like save me a lot of time. And then I come in as more of like a fail-safe and like gatekeeping.
And I think that is the key to really be able to be in the details at that level of scale. Having really good people that can give you that leverage, that you can trust, that can take you, 80, 90% there. So you can truly be an editor, but not a creator and an editor.
Exactly. And look, if we had 1 or 2 more of those people, I think I would tell you right now that I had scaled that, but I haven't. Like I'm swamped, and I'm doing 18-hour days right now, and majority of it is product, and it's like unblocking product in many ways. So this hasn't, to be clear, really scaled well with us. It scaled really well until like a year ago or so. And then, the past year, it's like we do need a couple more folks around that can do that. And we started to find them through acquisitions. I love acquisitions also. I like, that's another kind of philosophy I have, is from an engineering perspective, we really care about getting experienced consumer grade engineers that have seen like large consumer grade scale on infrastructure and platform side, for obvious reasons, right? They need to be able to handle large scale, do things right, do things optimally, build the right infrastructure for reliability. But on product engineering, most of our product engineering is built from acquisitions. So it's finding like 3 to 10 person teams that are building their own startup, that are working on something that is complementary to ClickUp or something that we feel like we want to build. And then we join forces, and that team ramps up overnight. They're already ramped up. They know what they're building. They've done it before. To do it a second time, they can do it much faster and they can do it better. And the team works phenomenally well. They've already built the team like mentality. They've got that glue already. And so those teams are just able to move so much faster. I think that they're 10x teams compared to other squads. And that's been a really huge secret in how we've been able to scale product here.
M&A is another secret weapon, and I would love to learn how you go about attracting those type of teams to join your company instead of building on their own vision.
First of all, finding them is I'm a product person, so I'm always looking at all of the new tools and the latest updates from other tools, and like I'm constantly tracking what everybody is doing. And we actually built like an AI system to do this now, but I'll go in there and see, oh, this looks cool, and then I'll play with the product, and I judge it based on product and time. So how long have they been building, and what is the product like? And if I feel like they've built fast and they built high quality, nice experience and functionality, then I reach out to them. I'm like, hey, let's just have a conversation. Love to learn from you, and open to anything you want to learn about from me. And I think pretty quickly, usually in the first meeting, honestly, by the end of that meeting, I kind of know like whether or not it would be a fit. And then I'm always just super transparent with them. I think so many companies like drag startups along for M&A for a really long process. And then they say, hey, they're leading them on. They're like, hey, yeah, we'll acquire a company and blah, blah, blah. And I always and I tell them in the first meeting, I'm just like, look, like we'll be super transparent with you. I want us to align on first of all, is this 1 + 1 = 10? Meaning each of us separate are not as good as we are together. And second of all, if that's true, then what the deal looks like from a high level terms, like literally talking numbers on the second meeting. And I tell them this just because like, if we're in different ballparks, I'm a time person. I'm obsessed with time, and I want to save you time. So if we're in different ballparks, there's no reason for us to continue the conversation, right? Let's just align on the ballpark first. And then if we feel like we both feel like that's the value that we want, then we continue. And that for us has really, I think, expedited the process a lot, but also built a lot of trust in the companies that we acquire.
Especially if the founder goes straight to the other founder and the founder is a user of the product, like it just changes everything. It's very different than bringing in the investment banker and put together the data room and the pitch deck and the attorneys, and everything gyets so dirty at the end that everybody's exhausted.
I know, and we had that for a little bit, honestly, but I realized quickly, it was not a good way of doing things. And this may be another thing that doesn't scale with me, but for right now, I love it and I enjoy it. And the scaling thing, at least from my perspective, is always about like, how can I get more time for product, and I include M&A in that. And I've had really great people on our E team around me that are able to run the finance side of the business and the revenue engines and engineering, so that I can focus my time where it's most valuable.
But let's talk about AI, because I can imagine that can be not only a good way for you to scale yourself, but also for your product to scale for other customers. And I was geeking out on different releases, and I saw the chat release, I saw the AI search. So please tell us more about the specific use cases that your product offers related to AI.
I was always that person that was very skeptical of AI when it comes to like venture capital, and when it came to like a few years ago, everybody talking about AI, because I could never. I got kind of deep into it, and I'm pretty technical. I used to code, and so I would start playing with some of these things. I was like, there's just no use case for it right now. Like, why would somebody use this unless you're building something that's like a really deep machine learning model that you need for driving cars or something like that? I couldn't find the practical value in it. And our whole mission is making people more productive. So I was always in the back of my head is like, there's going to be something there, but it's not there yet. And then when the later models came out, it's like, it was very obvious to me that there is a lot of things that we can build that actually save people time, and that other people are not building right now. I think AI has become largely a chat tool that helps with writing and searching. And it's like, that's great. And I love it for that use case. And I use it for that too. But it actually doesn't really save people time when it comes to most of your job, when you're actually working as a generalist or a knowledge worker inside of a company. So that's our goal. And our first goal is to really kill work about work. Like, I think there's so much process in writing updates manually. We have AI for writing project updates, and they're actually really, really great. We have AI for writing your stand-ups, and it doesn't automatically post it, but you confirm it first just to verify it, and you can change it if you want, and you can send that. We have a wide variety of AI project management features, so we automatically assign tasks based on whatever criteria you want. We automatically update statuses, and we do this throughout your whole workspace. But more importantly, with chat is the first lever that I see where AI is actually super valuable for every single employee to use. And the kind of thesis that I had was it's really difficult to get the average user to go ask a question to AI, right? Really, really, really freaking difficult to do. We've learned this based on data. But what you can do is you can rely on that person to ask questions to other people. That's what happens all the time. Employees or teammates are asking messages to other people in channels or in DMs. And so what we do, or what we are releasing next couple of weeks really, is all of your answers where you chat about in ClickUp chat are answered via AI when we can answer them. So you go ask a question to a channel about a project, and we answer that question for you. You talk about a task, and we automatically relate the task to that thread so that you start drawing all this context together. Because that's been the biggest problem with chat I wanted to solve was like noise and context being lost. There's so much noise from chat, and there's so much context lost because everybody just throws things in different channels. And my philosophy, I told the AI team, I'm like, look, it shouldn't matter where anybody puts anything. Just let them put anything in wherever they want. And our job is to automatically relate that context to the right context. And so when you look at a task now, if I open a task in ClickUp in our staging environment, I see all of the communication that ever happened about that task. I see it summarized. I see all of the Figma files. I see all of the Google Drive files. I see all of the customer interviews. I see all of the Zendesk tickets. I literally have an insight, like a God level view into everything around a project and a task. And I think that this is the way to actually produce like 10x value in time savings using AI.
Zeb, how do you go about finding information when that information is in places that you don't control? For example, you mentioned a Figma file or a Google Doc. Like, if you want to have that level of access to summarize and simplify information, like what am I missing here?
We got lucky in one big thing is I acquired a company called Slapdash about 3 years ago. And I always wanted, universal search didn't really exist back then, like workplace universal search. I always wanted to do that. I was like, I've got to have one place to search where I can search all of my apps from one single bar. And so we acquired that company and started working towards that. What we realized very quickly was that infrastructure that was built could be used for RAG, for AI. And we also could build our own models using that infrastructure. Because basically what that technology is it's one massive database that has a universal data model. So like a kind of object data model that works for any type of integration. Everything is flattened to like the same data model. Which is great for AI. It doesn't have to interpret like different meanings of different databases and things like that, and it doesn't have to access different databases. So this works perfectly for AI, and that was we just kind of got lucky with the timing there, and realized that we could do this with that. So we use that infrastructure today to be able to do this, where we don't just like surface level connect to integrations. We actually, when we connect to an integration, we sync your entire database from whatever that integration is. If it's Salesforce, if it's Zendesk, if it's Slack, if it's Google Drive, and we sync that into our universal data model. And now we have all of that data in real time. It's instant. It's 100 milliseconds that we get that data in, and AI can access all of it. So that's what we are leveraging right now to be able to build all of this AI functionality.
That's what I was missing. That universal search capability to really go deep. It's not just an index to put hyperlinks to other places.
Exactly. Yeah, we get all the context. We're not just syncing like the metadata. For Google Drive, like a presentation, we have all of the content from the presentation. Even from Figma files, we have all of the text and the frame information from the Figma file. So we're able to really create like a nice graph based on any project or user. So we can look at like myself or look at a designer, and you can see the graph of the stuff that they're working on for over everything, not just in ClickUp, over Figma and GitHub and everywhere else.
And how are you thinking about AI agents now that you're building a project management tool where, okay, you can help people understand what they have to do, but I can imagine there is a future where certain things don't need to be done by humans, and you can even close the loop by having agents do those things directly?
Where we are heavily focused on three things really. One is building our underlying platform, like I talked about, so that what we build can be used for other use cases. But the two use cases that we're focusing on are executive assistant and project manager. And we found a ton of time saved. I mean, I use this constantly every single day for scheduling a meeting, for writing an email. You just tag them into the thread in ClickUp, right? And I say, hey, schedule the meeting between these two people, and it does it in the thread context immediately. And project management, you can ask statuses of projects, and you get the results there. The project manager agent comes in and says, hey, you can turn on daily reports, or you can invoke it whenever you want. And so the daily report will say, hey, there's 3 stale tasks here. I think there's 2 duplicates. I think that there's 5 unassigned tasks. There's 2 that are look like that they're off track. And so we've really given like every single individual their own project manager and their own executive assistant, while building a platform that people can build their own agents on top of. And we have this in some beta customers right now, but we're launching it in November.
And how does that influence your thinking around pricing? As if you're starting a seat-based model where now you're potentially going to have people, maybe less people or more people, but the point is they are going to be using your product more. Like, how does that impact your pricing model?
Really great question. Something that we just talked about today, actually. And our thesis right now is to use some element of consumption pricing. What we want to do is prove how many minutes we've saved people. So that again goes back to our mission, saving people time. So all of our agent actions and automatic AI actions, we are trying to get an index on what does this action lead to in actual time savings? Like, is it 30 seconds? Is it 10 minutes? And then we plan to bill people based on that on a consumption level. So we'll give everybody a certain free usage of it. And then when you see your overage at the end of the month, you'll say, hey, look, AI saved us 10,000 minutes of manual work. And we want it to feel very fair consumption pricing. I don't think anybody really feels like consumption pricing is fair today. Like, I mean, at least in our case, like Datadog is like one of the nightmares for us of like getting surprised by a bill and like these nuances in the contract and stuff. So we want people to like have huge overage and then feel like they're getting the deal of a lifetime. And like, even if it was going to be, $5,000 in overage, we'll charge them $50, right? Charge them something that feels so fair and so generous to the user. And then really kind of just recoup our cost primarily, because I know that AI costs will come down over time. I think that's pretty obvious. But to the extent of the degree of where they come down, I don't know yet. But the point is that we are baking in the future. So we're trying to not really make a ton of margin on what we're giving and selling for AI today, knowing that the margins will come in the future when we host our own models, which we're building for like assigning tasks and estimating tasks. And once models also are more commoditized, and you have open source models that are much cheaper.
I love what you said around time saved, because that is what I think should be the ultimate success metric for any productivity tool. But you mentioned at the beginning of the interview how sometimes those productivity tools have a reverse incentive, and they make you spend more time and buy more. And then eventually you are sucked into something that is making you less productive. I remember one of your billboards on the airport would say things like, get 1 day back per week. That's really powerful. So how are you able to actually measure that with accuracy?
In the past, what we did was we measured it based on surveys, and we also ran we would have third parties come in and like study before and after ClickUp. And so those before and after ClickUp are the best way for us to know about time savings. And generally speaking, we got to that 20% is what I want, 1 day of like a business week. And so we got to at least 20% time saved before versus after ClickUp. After you start using it, it's actually a very complicated problem to solve that I don't think anybody solved is measuring productivity. But that's been a North Star for me since day one. Is like, how do we measure productivity? And we are starting to, like, I hope I can talk to you in 6 months and say, we cracked it, Carlos. Like, we know how to measure productivity now. And here's a report. And here's like my productivity over time, and be able to see the scale. Because it's not just about inputs. Like, to your point, it's not, are you like doing more things? Are you doing more actions? In fact, it may be less about that. It's more about like the value, the impact that happens from those actions and the time spent. So it's like time, inputs, or like activity, plus the value or the impact that was created from both of those things is how you measure productivity. And it's a data science thing, and we're trying to figure it out right now. But there isn't to date a great way of measuring it.
I'm going to take you up on that offer, Zeb. I really loved chatting with you today. Thank you so much for really going deep with me and geeking out on product like very few CEOs can do.
I had a blast, Carlos, and excited to join again in the future.